Welcome to Biztech.asia, the coaching show. And this is the first live edition. Now, have you ever wondered what happens when the power of coaching, which traditionally has been limited to upper leadership and the upper echelons of leadership, suddenly is opened up and becomes democratized? So, on today's topic, democratization of coaching, we dive into a journey into a world where mentorship knows no bounds. And to give us an expert lens, we have three distinguished coaches. We have Rozana Halpin, who's the Ontological Leadership Coach and Facilitator at KCOM Academy. We have Taranjeet Singh, the CEO of Steppe Advisory, both of whom are from Malaysia. And then we have Verticka Kohli, the Leadership and Talent Consultant Facilitator at Ukaavi Consulting, and she comes to us out of India. Everyone, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Now, for a quick start and a quick intro, could each of you give us a helicopter view of yourselves, your companies, and your history? And we want to start with the ladies first. Rozana, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, thank you, Brian. So I've been a coach for, I'd say, over 5 years now. I'm also a trainer and a facilitator. And I'm the Director of Learning and Development at KCOM Academy. So, like a lot of coaches that you speak to, I haven't always been a coach. So my previous life, I was a business analyst, and I kind of fell into coaching, to be honest. Coaching is my passion. I love how deeply transformative coaching is, and how like the whole process of coaching can really, turn out people who are better and more self-aware of themselves. And, I'm sure you'll agree with me that, we need more self-aware people in this world, right? People who can operate consciously, in all the realms of life, and, people who are aware of the impact that they're making around them, and that they're deliberate in the way that they interact with the world outside. So I love coaching. Even though I train and facilitate, coaching is my passion.
Now, over to you, Verticka.
Hi, thanks, Brian. So I'm Verticka from Delhi in India. I bring with myself about 21 years of experience in the industry, predominantly been into leadership, learning, talent development. That's been my area.
You don't look old enough to have done 21 years.
Oh, yes. The age is something which is hidden right now, but yeah, so I've been working across cultures. So, worked across the region of Southeast Asia, based out of Singapore for a couple of years, did a lot of work in the region, but predominantly around the learning, talent, leadership space. Been actually coaching for a fair chunk of my life. It used to be called feedbacking earlier, and then it started becoming more into coaching. So literally, all these probably about 17, 18 years. I think got certified probably about 8, 9 years back. So been doing a lot of coaching. And while I do a plethora of work, from competency design to facilitation to training design, I think coaching, just like what Rozana said, has a special place in my heart, because getting that excitement through somebody else's aha is what literally energizes me. So I think it's a lot about how do you help somebody else run their game while you get the engagement and energy out of it, which is what truly, truly excites me. And I think it's been a splendid journey in the coaching field so far, and I'm hoping it grows further as well. But thank you, Brian, for having us over, and really looking forward to this session today.
Thanks a lot, Verticka. Now over to you, Taranjeet.
Thank you, Brian. It's such a delight to be here today. Two excellent fellow panelists and speakers as well. So I've got 30-odd years in the management consulting arena, with experiences in Pricewaterhouse, in the area of Hewitt Associates, now Aon, HayGroup, now KornFerry. I was a practice leader of Hewitt Associates and HayGroup in Malaysia and Southeast Asia, respectively. Went on to become the managing director of KornFerry HayGroup out in Kazakhstan, Central Asia. Now I'm Steppe CEO, Steppe Advisory. It's a human capital advisory firm in Malaysia with a Central Asian and Asian coverage. I'm a certified global master coach with ICF. I've been in the field now as a certified coach for over 10 years or thereabouts. I'm on the rolls of the Institute of Corporate Directors of Malaysia as a credential member. One of the things that really fascinates me about coaching is the ability to now drive into the purposeful nature of what this is all about. Why is it that leaders behave in a particular fashion? Many times we get caught up by the formalities of development, but the moment you hit the coaching part, you actually become very personal and into yourself, and the realization comes forth, and that's really something that excites me. So that's a little bit about myself, Brian, and thank you for having us on the show.
No, and thanks, Taranjeet. Now I want to dive in straight away into
Sure.
really what we're here to talk about, which is really the democratization of coaching. And what's happened previously over the last couple of years is really about previously, coaching was very much an executive coach level, senior leadership perspective. But things have changed. It's gone down the food chain. We've got coaches who perhaps are not fully certified, but call themselves coaches because they've got a lot of experience. We've got digital coaches now, online coaching. There's a plethora of different solutions. I want to get your thoughts really, and any one of you can jump in terms of through your lens, how you see this as, is this something that's a positive element or is it a negative element? And perhaps you can share your perspective on this.
Sure. Who would like to start? Verticka?
Well, I was going to say, since you've spoken,
Go ahead.
Taranjeet,
Yes, absolutely. Taranjeet, start. We'll join in.
Okay, so it's a very good question, Brian. And you find the democratization now playing out more and more. And I think it's positive. It's absolutely positive. Why? Because it gives you an opportunity now to hit a diverse group of individuals, which is not originally C-suite or CEO or board related. Now I'm coming down the level. I won't say food chain, but I'm coming down the levels. I'm coming down the levels to junior managers, managers that are just started. And I think there is also a fundamental need for us to have a differentiated approach between coaching and mentoring. And many times people get confused. They talk about
Okay,
coaching, but
please
they
define that. Maybe you can define that because I get confused
absolutely,
myself. What's
absolutely,
the difference
absolutely.
between a mentor and what's the difference between a coach?
Absolutely, and allow me to start this, and the two ladies can then chime in. When we talk about coaching, we come to the table with a lot of questions, and that's where we start. It's about questioning. It's about reframing. It's not about telling. We don't tell you what to do. We don't direct you as a coach, as an executive coach. We are here to help you on this journey. And that's why we use the term co-create. We are constantly co-creating this objective, this journey together. Whereas if you come in as a mentor, Brian, you are here to help guide in a very purposeful fashion, but a little bit more in your face. So there's wisdom that I'm now sharing from the experiences that I bring that I'm now imparting to you. So almost akin to sit next to me and let me show you how the Excel sheet is done. That's mentoring. Versus, let me now ask you, what are the challenges that you're facing as you're going through this? Why are these challenges there? What can we do to overcome? What can it be done to make it better? Very different approaches and very different objectives. Does that make sense? Anyone else would like to chime in?
I think if I just sorry, go ahead,
No,
Rozana.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
So I think if I just add to what Taranjeet said, it's like a puzzle of somebody's life, right? As a coach, you're actually helping them form that puzzle because, as a coach, you truly believe that everybody's puzzle is very, very different. So, it could be pieces that you're sharing from your past, from your experience, but you're telling them nip it according to what kind of makes sense for you. I think taking it on the other side, a mentoring would be saying, oh, that's a piece of my puzzle. Why don't you try and see if that works for you? So I think rather than getting them to understand, getting them to nip it, you're actually helping them nip it as well in one way. So I think if you look at an organization, a lot of times the coaching gets masked by mentoring, because the people are so close to the work, so close to the individual, that it could have a layer of mentoring on it. Because as a coach, you probably need to stand really far away and help them decide what their life is and the why behind it. Versus a mentor, you'll probably be much closer to them to help them say, oh, maybe you can do that, or maybe you can add that to it as well. So I think just to add to that, Rozana, please, if you would like to add anything to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the confusion happened because of the origins of the word coach, right? It comes from the sports arena, and the coach in that sense kind of directs as well as give feedback. And a good distinction for me is always like a mentor is normally somebody who is an expert in that particular area, whereas a coach doesn't have to be, but the coach is an expert in the coaching process.
Yep.
So they don't have to have prior knowledge of that particular area, but they do need to be good at what they do. As a coach, what we do is we open up and maybe go into possibilities that have never been untapped, hasn't been gone into before. But whereas if you have a mentor, you're actually, I don't want to use the word imposing, but sharing the possibility that the mentor has already encountered, the experience that they have, and they're sharing that. So it's a already well-trodden path. Whereas with a coach, we are looking at possibilities that might have, never have happened yet, but could potentially be the solution. Does that make sense?
Excellent. Yeah, excellent.
Now, can I ask
allow
you
me.
So go ahead.
Sorry,
Taranjeet.
Brian. Yeah. So allow me to then continue with the democratization part. And I think you raised this earlier before we were waylaid by the coach mentoring definition. So I think the thing that is playing out, one, is it worth a while? Absolutely. I personally truly like what's playing out. I like the fact that it is now being made open to everyone. The same way as anyone can fly, now anyone can have a coach, which is absolutely brilliant. We're not governed by demographics. We're not governed by regional, social areas. Anyone can come in. However, with that brings many different areas or perspectives that we need to look at. And the first one is to instill standards. Insofar as anyone can become a coach, I now have a concern. What type of coaching standards does the coach bring to the table? Because anyone can be a coach. And the fact that we are now looking at the opportunity of opening it up, the accountability to do the right thing. There is proper training that we go through in terms of ethical standards, making sure that there's a level of privacy and confidentiality. And we go through that training as a credentialed coach. Now, if you come in as a purported coach, and I'm not saying that's good or bad, but if you come in as a purported coach, you may have an issue in that regard. What are ethical? Because nobody has taught me. And the other one is the ability to self-regulate, Brian. Self-regulating, creating an awareness with the coaching clients to ensure that the coaches have the right frame of mind and the purpose to be engaged for the organization. So in my mind, there are several things that are playing out, a sense of awareness as to what this is about and who is doing this coaching. So whilst it's a great concept, I think we need to also be a bit mindful from a pragmatic perspective. What does it really bring to the table?
Okay, can I just jump in at this point of time? Because I want to use a automotive analogy to really summarize this whole democratization of coaching. And I want to use Toyota as an example. So in the Toyota family, you have Lexus, and then the top of the range Lexus is a limousine used by world leaders, bulletproof, and so forth. At the entry level of the Toyota family, you have small hatchback, mini 660cc car in Japan that sells for $10,000 US. Now, what is that solving? All of that does actually fundamentally the same thing: mobility, But even the smallest car, what is known as a K car in Japan, 10,000 US dollars, that basically all provides mobility solutions that are of quality. And I look at coaching is exactly the same. You have the Taranjeets of this world that charge thousands of dollars a day, but there are also different coaches that then can charge 10 US dollars or something because it's a digital approach. And that's where
Absolutely.
I see that it's a great opportunity to develop human capital because now we have different solutions. What are your thoughts, Verticka and Rozana?
I think the true situation is that when any industry really grows, right? And you've seen coaching as an industry really grow in the past couple of years. So when any industry grows, there's a lot of noise which ends up happening. And I think what ends up happening is a lot of options need to be developed because there's a demand for it and people are seeing it as lucrative as well. So I think this is a normal process of growth of any industry. I mean, if I look back in India, there was a time, as you mentioned, Brian, that it was a niche service which was offered only to CXOs because it was really expensive. And I think in India, you had a different connotation as well. Only if you were in that top list and you probably needed support because you're not doing really well, or you need to be pushed a bit. That's when
So that was a
coaching
stigma.
coming in. Absolutely. I think now it's changing and people are literally putting their hand up to say, can I please get a coach? And I think that's going to be very beneficial for me. So it is a lucrative industry. Lots and lots and lots of training institutes have mushroomed up because that's a requirement. When the demand is there, the supply needs to be there as well. But as Taranjeet said, can you maneuver the quality? Just like your example of Toyota, can we ensure that, the Lexus of the world and the smaller cars of the world at least have a standard process which is right there? So I think that's really, really important. But I truly think it's a fantastic thing because, you have the need to it. People have the need to it. It's no longer a stigma. But, if I'm told that, somebody like a Taranjeet who's charging thousands of dollars and I cannot really afford them, is there somebody else I can afford as well? So I think it's a beautiful journey really in the industry and for us coaches as well.
Rozana?
Yeah, I'm still sitting on the fence whether it's a positive or a negative thing. I can see the positive aspects of it. Of course, it makes it more accessible to everyone. However, just to use your analogy, and like how Verticka was saying, even though you have the Lexuses and the lower end cars, Toyota has ensured a certain level of standard in all those. Yes. So that can be what's missing if we kind of just open up the industry to anybody who can call themselves a coach, is that quality that might be missing, And if you talk about the Lexus, of the coaching world, like say Taranjeet, he didn't become an MCC just because, he's certified. He spent years working on it. Developing it so that when you get to that Lexus level, it's because it's been refined and the quality is, it's what you're paying is what you're getting. So I'm not sure if it's entirely positive because there's still that concern in my mind about the quality of what people are getting. Yeah, you're getting coaching, but is the coaching really helping you? Because sometimes I feel like if the coach is not trained well enough, it can actually be detrimental to the client.
Absolutely.
And we don't want that to happen.
And Rozana, I think all of us have that fear. That fear really that there are quacks going around because, again, it's a lucrative business. There's money to be made. And some people are very good at self-promotion. So sometimes the competency is not there, but self-promotion is there. So how can we then ensure that across platforms, so again, one of the lowest cost of delivery in terms of coaching is, of course, digital delivery. And that's really helped to democratize. So anybody can get some level of coaching from an app today. And I there are various apps across the region, various digital platforms. That's probably the entry level or the K car level, the $10,000 car level. basic coaching that you can get as an individual. What are your thoughts? And I'm going to start now with this time with Verticka. What do you think we need to do in terms of standards?
I think I might just sound like a saint while I say that, but I think quality is what will stand the test of time. I think there will be a time, and it's something which is in the making, but there will be a time that I think the industry will gain maturity, and you're seeing that. You're being asked for certifications. No longer me just saying I'm a coach is going well. I mean, in India at least, they want to know, are you ICF certified, or do you have a certification with it? How many years have you been coaching? So I think it is getting there. Has it happened? Not really. So I think the industry will get a little more mature. The industry will regulate themselves. And I guess customers or clients in our way will start making a little more informed choices as well. Because, we have the likes, as you mentioned, of AI, chat GPT, lots of providers that come in at very, very low costs as well. But I think as a coach, the differentiator really is the experience, is the culture. It's about that trusting relationship, which maybe somebody sitting at the back of an AI or with an online coach who's not even visible cannot really make by the end of it. So I think it will get there, because if I throw numbers at you in India, these numbers are crazy. I was reading up that I think ICF, as of ICF data, somewhere in March 21 that they came out, we have about 1,000 credentialed coaches in India. If you add all the other degrees and coaching institutions, probably about 45 trained coaches, and we're sitting on a population of about 1.4 billion in India, right?
That seems awfully small for your population.
Exactly.
There's probably more than that in Malaysia.
And even if I split this 1.4 into rural and urban, we have about 30%, which is pure urban population. So that 4,500 does not qualify, which means there's so much happening across levels. And it could be somebody who's charging a bomb, being a proper coach. There could be the AI platforms as well. But I guess it's about the client really going back and saying, what am I getting? And it's not money, really. The discussion that we end up having is, you're going to charge this much? That's the amount that I pay for 20 people sitting in my classroom. How can I afford that? That conversation, when it starts going to say, what is the experience you're going to get? What's the relationship you're going to get to it? That's when the change will really end up happening. Otherwise, not really.
Well played. May I add on to that, Brian?
Sure, please.
So I think like any professional organization or program, it should not be taken lightly. I think there is time being spent, there's effort being expended, and there's investments being incurred. And this applies to the coaching world as well. So if you go in there and we talk about, and you raise the issue around setting of standards and having quacks come in. So it's very interesting, because there's nothing stopping these quacks, and I don't mean any disrespect to anyone, but there's nothing stopping these quacks from coming in and practicing medicine. But there are regulations, there are certified bodies, there is a way in which you practice medicine. And this now becomes a self-regulated approach. Now, for something to Verticka's point, the last couple of years, we've seen a proliferation of this within not only within Malaysia, but within Southeast Asia at large, because the demand has just shot up through the roof, whether it be executive coaching or life coaching, going through my mental well-being and blah, 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 So you've got that demand playing out. And naturally, where there's a demand, you now have immediate opportunities for supply. The question now comes in is, what steps are we taking to ensure that we do the right thing? To ensure that the supply that comes in are of a minimum standard. Let's not talk about a maximum standard. Let's just talk about the minimum standard. To Rozana's point, if I don't do it right, I actually end up hurting the client. Simply because the questions that I used are very ill-timed. There's a lot of timing discussions that go in. The questions that I use are very thought-provoking. If I hit you at the wrong time in this journey, you'll end up actually doing a lot more detrimental harm than you would do good. But unfortunately, if I'm not trained in this fashion, I don't know. And the last thing I want to do is go through hurt someone unintentionally, but then put it down, oh, I've got experience in that. Yeah, at what cost, Brian? And that's my point here.
And can I jump in before I forget, Rozana? And I just want to answer something that Taranjeet brought up. While I'm an absolute advocate of the democratization of coaching, the reality is Taranjeet has hit the nail on the head, and so have you, in terms of the possibility of damage and hurt to the person who is receiving coaching if it's not done correctly. Because
Yes.
after all, there is a blurring of lines between a coach and almost a sports psychologist or a trained psychologist.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that's the worry. And so if we want to use Taranjeet's example of doctors, then how do we select the doctor? The doctor needs to be in most jurisdictions, you've got to be licensed. It's a guild, basically. You've got to have your qualifications, and there should be some minimal standards. So that the first thing is the industry as a whole, and that's what we're doing here with this the coaching show, really to uplift the industry standards and awareness that, hey, there needs to be a minimum standard, as Taranjeet and yourself pointed out. And then so people, HR leaders then have to question if they're going to hire people, what sort of certification have you had? What is your, and then that should be some sort of the baseline. So Taranjeet, I wanted to address what both of you said, but Rozana, your thoughts.
Okay, so I just want to pick up on that point about certification as well. So, as Taranjeet's mentioned, I think Verticka's mentioned as well, that the demand is really growing for coaching. And as demand grows, supply also increases. Now, who's providing the supply of these coaches? Coaching schools, right? And coaching schools are businesses. So I think there's also responsibility on the coaching schools to make sure that the coaches that they turn out are also meeting the minimum standard. Now, I say this because I'm also a coach assessor for a coaching school. And, it's often the case that they go through 6 days of training, for example, and after 6 days of training, if they pass that coaching call, we can unleash them onto the world, as coaches.
Okay.
So even with certification, you can still get coaches that are not so great. So I think we need to take the accountability and the responsibility one step back as well to the coaching schools, so that they can be more rigorous, not just in the training, but also in the assessment, so that the coaches that they certify are of at least the minimum standards. Because don't forget, coaching schools are a business too. Absolutely. They also have, to meet targets, they want to have a certain number of success rate, all of that. So we need to kind of make them kind of responsible for that as well, I feel.
Absolutely.
Of a statement that I read, which is a good toolkit does not always make a good plumber, right? So you can get a certificate, you can get a nice booklet, you can get, all the possible models and knowledges and processes and approaches, but that doesn't really make a good coach. And I think, just picking up from what Rozana said, institutions definitely, because it's not just sheer numbers that they're churning out. So that's one big responsibility. But I think I'll give also the second responsibility to the individuals wanting to become a coach, right? It's not just money that you're riding after. Do you really have the intent to coach? Or is it just probably being in that power? I think it's a two-way responsibility in my mind. Absolutely, for the coaching institutes, it's the credentials, it's the competence. It's not just numbers that, churn out one badge, there's another one standing in the wings. But even individuals need to think about it, because it's not just money, you're impacting somebody's life. And if we as coaches can just have that at the back of our hand, or back of our mind, actually, that will really maneuver how we have those conversations and question ourselves, is this for me really?
Okay,
I
now I
agree.
just want to stop you all.
Japan.
I just want to jump in a little bit here just to tell the audience in about 5 minutes' time, we will be opening questions to the audience. And so if you've got questions, please type it in on all the various social media platforms that you're looking in. And perhaps if you've got an interesting question, we will bring you into the conversation. So we look forward to some of you getting some questions in and then getting them answered by our experts here. So sorry, I interrupted Rozana.
No, Taranjeet.
Taranjeet, go ahead.
No worries, no worries. So just to add on to that, we are assuming that the individuals are going through a coaching school, but you also have individuals who say, I've got 15 years worth of experience. I am a coach. And there's nothing, and I have had some very exciting discussions with individuals around the table that says, I don't need a certification because the clients are not necessarily asking for certifications. What I bring to the table is the ability to run a multi-million, a multi-billion dollar business. So why do I need a certification for that? Now that's where mentoring comes in. Very different.
Correct. And that's a
So
board member type of thing, right? That's what a board member should be doing, mentoring the CEO, mentoring the C-suite.
absolutely. But I also have individuals who are a lot lower down the rungs who are coming in and saying, I've had 15 years worth of senior experience within the organization. I will now go out there and set up my own coaching service. So we need to be very mindful. And the reason why I say mindful is when these individuals sell themselves, which they will, and there's nothing wrong with that, the counter to that is, what makes you think that you are the coach that we need in this regard? Show me what you have done. What are the credentialing that you have done? And that's where it becomes a little bit more aware in terms of where the clients are coming from. Does that make sense, Brian?
Yeah, it does. I have a different take on that, or an extension of that, but I want to hear from Rozana and Verticka first.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to pick up on what Verticka was saying about the responsibilities also on the individual, right? So it's not, people go into coaching because it's lucrative. They think, okay, I'm retiring now. Let me see what I can do in my spare time. Hey, that's a normal thing, right? So they do that. But really, they do need to ask themselves that deeper question. Why am I doing this? Because I believe that coaching is a calling. You have to have, it fulfills a deeper purpose, and it's bigger than you. It's like, what is the impact that I want to make in the world? What, do I want to empower people? Do I want to leave a legacy where, I have helped transform people's lives? So I believe that coaching is like that. So people who go into coaching do need to ask themselves that question. I want to just bring up an example of a coaching school that I actually went to learn the methodology of the coaching. I was already certified. And what they do with all their students is this. They do what we normally do with our clients, which is a discovery call with the students to see if the students actually make the cut. Because if they don't get in.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good.
And that's really that first level of quality assurance, the discovery call. In your methodology, that's probably that first level.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Verticka, your thoughts?
I think, if I just pick on from what Rozana said, in India, I've seen it work both ways. So, on the discovery angle, one is, ourselves really to kind of figure out if that's what we want to do, if that's what my calling is. What we're seeing increasingly here is there was a time that, oh, you want to be a coach? I have one person. Why don't you kind of start coaching them? I think now, because of the availability, they're also trying to see the styles of the coaches really end up matching. So, I have done so many of these sessions, which are just discovery sessions, but it's the figuring out from both sides, which is the client as well as me, if we can really work together. And I think that's something that clients need to do increasingly, because you will realize, what you're getting onto the table. Having that experience, saying I have 15 years or 20 years of leadership experience, or if I have exclusive knowledge, that's no longer the one which cuts it. It's about how you have those conversations. Are you getting energized by somebody else's story, or are you the one who wants to talk about your story all the time, right? And I think I have had so many discussions where we just trying to match the working styles to say, are you getting what I really want? So I guess in India, I am seeing an awareness in clients where they are trying to figure out if you're somebody I want to work with. And specifically at those levels where it really matters, maybe the top, the middle, the high performers, they are really making that cut as well. But it's very unregulated, and I think we can do nothing on that unregulation. Yeah, certification should be there, but the reality of life is it will not come in. So I guess the onus lies on the client. So there are three people who the onus lies on in my thought. One is obviously the client. Are you figuring out what you're getting, or are you just looking at the numbers? And in India, if I give you average, you will get somebody from 2,500 rupees, which is probably $120, I think, if I'm not wrong, to probably $1,800 an hour, right? That's the range that you will end up getting. So are you looking at the numbers? Because if you look at just the cost, then you may not really get the experience, exposure, expertise as well. But again, can you match it at the right level? The second onus definitely lies on the individual, and the third onus on the coaching companies. It's not sheer numbers. You're doing it for money, but you're ending up impacting somebody's life. So I think if we all three parties work responsibly, I think this whole democratization, demystification is beautiful, right? Because it just gives access to so many people across so many levels who probably wouldn't have the bandwidth to be able to get that coaching really. So I think that's my little take on that.
Well said.
Okay, I want to take a pause here for a moment and let Ryan first come into the equation. Ryan has a question for us. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, good evening. Thank you.
Now, Ryan, you have a question for, perhaps you could share your thoughts with us in terms of the topic at hand, democratization of coaching.
First of all, I'm loving this topic of coaching democratization, and I love the automobile analogy from you, Brian. The question that I have,
could I just stop you at a moment? Could you identify yourself, perhaps, and what you do to give the audience context?
Right. My name is Ryan Taju. I'm an event manager and a marketing manager. I've had coaching throughout my corporate career. The question that I have in mind when hearing about coaching, also it comes to mind with therapy and therapists. Would it be worthwhile for a company, an enterprise, to send one of their staff, a potential coach, to get certified so all the staff within the enterprise have access to that certified coach all the time? Or would it be better to hire a high-tier, top-level expert certified coach, but compromise on the access to those coach throughout the year? I got this from the automobile example that you mentioned earlier, because there are different qualities, but it's an automobile and it delivers and it transports you from point A to B. So what are your thoughts on this? Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Who would like to take that question?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Okay, so Ryan is asking, is it more, from what I understand, is it more cost effective for the organization to send somebody from their organization to learn coaching and become an internal coach, and so that they're accessible to everyone all of the time because they're working internally, plus it's cheaper, or is it better for them to get an external coach? And I think we kind of talked about this, before, not in this show, but when we were talking the other day, that, we have that option. We have that option of having internal coaches. And if we do have internal coaches, we can be assured of the quality, and it makes it accessible to people within the organization. But also, I want to bring in other formats of coaching. If you're talking about accessibility, there's things like group and team coaching where a coach can coach many people. So it doesn't have to be one-to-one, it could be one-to-many, right? So that will make coaching accessible as well. And also, if we're talking about lower level executives, maybe you don't want to put somebody in your organization through the whole coaching program and let them become certified coaches. There's also the possibility of teaching your managers coaching skills, which would mean that people get coached as and when they need to be coached. I hope that answers your question somewhat, Ryan.
And can I and Ryan, if I could summarize what I understand from Rozana's response, which is a great response, essentially is it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. There are multiple approaches that can be taken depending on the organization. Is that about it, Rozana?
Yes, in a nutshell.
Can I add on to that, Brian?
Sure. Okay, let the lady go first. Verticka, you're
Of
dominating
course.
the conversation, Taranjeet.
So I think very aptly said, Brian, that there's no one size fits all. I know an organization, and I have a colleague who's actually in this organization, a full-fledged coach, but he specifically works only for this organization. So he is actually employed internally as a full-time coach just to enhance the availability, the accessibility, and the fact that he understands the nuances of the organization as well. So I think that works as well. The model that Rozana said, which is about, can you get managers to be as coaches, that works as beautifully. You could have externals come in as well. I think each one of these aspects has its pros and cons. From a financial aspect, from a confidentiality aspect, from that whole element of mentoring / coaching, that are you far away from the job, are you too close to it? I think there are pros and cons to each one. There's no one size which is probably the benchmark, the world standard. I think each organization will need to see, do I have enough ROI for either of these cases? Whichever ones works beautifully, I think works essentially. Taranjeet, over to you.
May I come in?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So I will spin it slightly differently, guys. My thought is the ability to now drive a coaching culture within an organization, which therefore means it's no longer about coaching, but it's the way we behave in this organization that includes the type of questions that coaches ask. So as managers, we are taught, well, most of us are taught, if you go down the professional side, we are taught how to be accountable for our people that report to us. We are also taught how to take accountability for their actions. We are also taught about how do we now hold them to account, which are very difficult discussions and concepts to get your head around. But in that, there's also this discussion around how could I be even more effective as a manager by inculcating a coaching-based culture in the organization. So much so that it's no longer coaching, it's the way we behave. It's part and parcel of our life here. So it's not just that alone. So
It's your
I
DNA
like
then.
it's your DNA. Absolutely. And that is across the board for all people managers and business leaders in terms of functional leaders, I mean. So my going in is, let's not talk about bringing people, let's not talk about external, internal. Let's now focus on what does this mean to us as an organization and whether it's worth my while to inculcate this coaching culture. If it is, then that's not an issue. But what also then happens, it takes time. Like anything cultural, it takes a little bit of time. But the rewards that you get out of this, and I've seen this playing out, the rewards you get out of this, it's exponential.
I'm going to be a devil's advocate there, Taranjeet. And this probably comes from just an experience, a very recent experience with a company here in India. Similar, I want to create a coaching culture, and they actually went all out. I think the amount of money that they spent on coaching each level was actually heartwarming, because they went through training programs. They had somebody who actually come trained. They actually gave each individual a coach to be able to run this journey. I think when I got introduced, my question to them was, are you ready? Are you ready? There's so much happening around you. Are you really ready? So, but I think these guys were much keener to jump on the bandwagon, because I think the coaching culture is a word that's being used very, very openly, very explicitly in India as well. And I think it was actually, and somewhere I was trying to tell them in a lot of with a lot of push to say, I don't think you're ready. But then, I was working with someone, I said, if they are ready and they think they're ready, why are you kind of doing that? Long story short, I think we ran it for it was a 9-month engagement. I think 4 months down, we had to shut it out because it was creating chaos in the organization. So, absolutely, I think the ideal situation is to have that. But a good question for clients to think about when they jump onto that bandwagon is, am I ready? Are my people really ready? Are they mature to handle that as well? Because it used to play out very differently. So, they had these personality clashes which were happening, because I'm going to be coaching, so I'm not going to ask you for numbers, or I'm going to ask you for numbers, but I'm not going to coach. It was mayhem, right? So I think just a little bit of a different perspective, which was a very recent example.
You're absolutely right, and it's not something that needs to be taken lightly. It should not be taken lightly. I think you're right. The maturity levels of the organization has to be played out as well. But I think more importantly, my going in is, why are we looking at it separately? My going in is, it should be one and the same developmental discussion. It should be one and the same performance-based discussion, because we got coaching for high performers. We've got coaching for people that I want to exit. How do I now enhance development in these regards, and the likes? So it's not about the type of tools that we are using, but it's now inculcating that so that you can pick up whatever you want, because you have an understanding of what it takes. That's what I mean by this. So it's not about, we have to do this in order for us to get that. All I'm saying is, if I am building accountability for managers of people and teaching them, why can't I go out there and increase that awareness to include coaching skills? That's all I'm saying.
Now, Ryan, have we answered your question?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I got all sorts of answers. Thank you so much.
Now, Ryan, thank you very much for asking the question. I'm going to take you offline now, and then we've got time for one other question, and that's from Dave. Dave, hello?
Hello, can you guys hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, yes, we can. Hi, Dave.
Okay.
Could you identify yourself and your background, please?
All right. So, yeah, nice to meet all of you. It's a great honor to be here. I actually have tons and tons of questions, but I'm just going to ask one. So my name is Davidson Abhishekam. I've been a corporate trainer, certified as a coach as well, and a corporate trainer for the past 28 years, running my own training and coaching firm. Now, I find this a very interesting topic, and as I said, I have a lot of questions to ask, but I think many of it has been discussed, and probably we need to do that another time because of time purposes.
That's correct.
But the question I really like to ask today is, we talked about the standards and requirements and quality of a coach. So the question really is, what then would the qualities of a coach need to be, no matter where they fall on the rung that we talked about, whether at the Lexus or the K motors that you talked about? So whichever level you fall in, what essentially should be the qualities they possess, which would then make them a qualified coach? Thank you.
Oh, I love it. I truly love it.
Sounds like you want to jump in there, Taranjeet.
No, I'm not going to answer that yet. So otherwise I'll get a rap on my knuckles here. So I'm going to leave it to you.
Ladies go first.
Okay, I think that's a great question. And sometimes I think most of the time people underestimate what it takes to be a good coach. It's not just about learning the skills. It's not just about learning how to ask questions. It's really, something that you need to practice all the time. It's qualities that you need to embody in yourself, not just in the coaching session. Things like deep listening. Listening is a very underrated skill, and it's a very difficult skill to hone. When I'm assessing what would be coaches, usually that's the area that they would fall short on. They don't know how to listen well. Things like self-awareness. I always believe that, even though you don't have to be an expert in a particular knowledge area, you do need to be able to guide your coachee to a certain place, right? And if you yourself, as a coach, doesn't have self-awareness, are not constantly reflecting on yourself and improving yourself, it's pretty hard to guide your client to that place that you've never been before, in terms of the deep kind of levels of transformation that needs to happen. Other qualities like being present, that's also a skill that has to be honed continuously. We get distracted all the time as human beings, and it needs practices to be able to do that. Things like, I don't know, maybe meditation, which I practice to help me to be able to be present for my client. I'll leave the other skills for the other two, but there's many different skills that a coach must have, no matter where they're at, who they're coaching. I'll pass it over to the other two to kind of continue from there.
I think, as Rozana said, I think there's a plethora of qualities and skills that they need. But if I need to prioritize, I think the first one that Rozana said, which was about active listening. And I think it's a very, very tough one. We all believe we listen, but the question is, do we genuinely listen, right? And there was a statement that I read that listening or communication, 7% is just the words that come out. 38% is the tonality, and 55% is the body language. So as a coach, are you combining all of this, or are you just listening to words? Are you actively listening to everything that's happening in that conversation, be it sensing, feeling, all those sensory organs really activated? So I think that's the first and the most critical one for me. The second one is about being non-judgmental, because we all have those judgments at the back of our mind. So can I hold on to that? And can I ask the questions? Can I let the person actually answer the whys? And are my questions powerful enough? They shouldn't be rhetorical. They should be open-ended, which push a person to think beyond, right? So that's on the intellectual side and the communication side for me. And I think the third one is about which ties it all. I've had many coaching sessions where it's all talk, and then there's no action. So as a coach, are you able to help them pull back to say, okay, enough talking happened. What are you really going to do next? I think for me, these three predominantly top the list of the probably plethora of skills that an individual needs to have as a coach across levels.
Taranjeet,
over to you.
I have nothing else to add.
really? Can I
I
ask
have
something?
nothing else.
One thing that I think, and I'm not a coaching practitioner, so this is just an opinion, isn't empathy a skill that a coach needs to have as well?
I think empathy is a skill that we all need to have as human beings, but
Yeah.
probably more so for a coach.
Also as a coach? I want to ask Dave a question, because it's fascinating. Dave, you have, and thanks for asking the question, you have 28 years of experience in training and coaching. Now, can you share with us, because this is a coaching show and it's about democratization, tell us about how you've seen, and I'm assuming you're from Malaysia.
That's right.
How have you seen the industry evolve over the last 28 years?
Okay, when I started in this industry, to be very honest, coaching was in where I come from. The space that I was in was almost unheard of. So we're talking 28 years ago. And then it slowly evolved. I think in 2004, if I'm not mistaken, It was the first time I heard about a coach. Of course, like Rozana mentioned earlier, I thought of sports coach. And then I was educated, and then years later, I went to a coaching school, got certified. But my realm has really been training, facilitation. So coaching was my standby tool, which I apply in my training session. So I'm not a full-fledged coach in that sense, like the three experts that we have with us today. However, in all these years, especially since COVID, I've seen coaching schools, coming out everywhere, not just in the West, but also in Southeast Asia and right here in Malaysia as well. And which is all good in terms of the topic that we are discussing today. Again, my question is, again, the quality. Because I've witnessed coaches who may be good in coaching, like they've learned all the skills, but they fail terribly where communication is concerned. Like every sentence has multiple grammatical errors, for example. It becomes difficult to be in a conversation with such a person. So does that make them a good coach? Just a thought. And then we have people who have the gift of the gab, where their English is flawless and they are confident. However, do they really possess the coaching skills? But guess what? I'm impressed with the way they speak. But does that equal to you being a good coach? So you see, it's really between the two that we really want to find a balance where you have, both. Your English is okay, but you really have the coaching skills. You can take me, a client, from point A to B. So in terms of involvement, I think, yes, it's not matured. The need is really there globally. I mean, it was a thriving business coaching in the US during COVID. I'm sure all of you heard that. So a lot of people said, hey, let me jump into this bandwagon. It's money making. But is it really serving its purpose?
Yeah.
Dave, thank you very much.
Welcome.
May I add on?
Sure,
Yeah,
go
may I
ahead.
add on? So I would like to, I think, emphasize there are two things that I would like to throw into the hat, into the ring. The first one is the ability for you to relook at your purpose. What is the purpose that you bring to the table? And to Dave's point, to Rozana's point, if I don't have a clarity of thought on that purpose, it becomes rather awkward. So that's the first one. Why are you actually doing this? But in addition to the area around empathy and the clarity that Verticka talked about, I would actually add on the ability to be resilient. Because resilience, you're talking about a 9-month journey. You're not talking about 2 weeks. And there is a need to be purposeful in that 9 months. But more importantly, there's a need to be resilient, because you are working this as a choreographed dance with the coachee. Sometimes the coachee leads, sometimes you lead. But at the end of the day, there is an end game destination. We're not here, like in Bahasa, kita jangan main-main lah, we don't play. This is the real thing. We have been brought in to do a job, and we have to take that job very seriously, because the organization is dependent on the outcomes of this coaching engagement. So insofar as we would like to have a nice time, but there is, and to Rozana's point, we have the ability to take them to a happy place, whatever that happy place may be, because that's the job that we need to look at. I hope that's making sense with Brian.
Thanks, Taranjeet and Dave. Thank you for asking the questions. Thanks for giving your opinions. I will just take you off air right now. Thank you so much for asking the question.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Now, Rozana, Verticka, and Taranjeet, I think we've had a great conversation. We've just got about a minute to go. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with before we end this conversation? I'm going to start with Verticka first.
So I think, if I go back to the topic that we start, and I know we've deviated a bit, we've come back to the same topic. So if I go back to this whole democratization of coaching, I think it's a very positive trend in the right direction. I truly feel that, by breaking down these barriers, getting the affordability factor up, expanding coaching offerings as well to quite an extent through different, ways, different means. I think we as coaches can support more people, right? And this whole need for personal development, professional development is truly there. So there is a huge demand. But I guess let us be the owners, let us actually take that responsibility, because we are impacting somebody's life in some way. So if you're able to carry that on, because you can only change yourself, we can actually say the coaching institutes should change, the clients should change. I don't have control over that. So if I as a coach can actually work very responsibly, because it is a responsibility on my shoulders, I think it's a beautiful thing that's happened in the industry. Affordability was always an issue, and people used to wait for organizations to fund their coaching initiatives. I have had some initiatives which probably came from NGOs recently, where people funded their own coaching. So I think the change is happening. Affordability is definitely a determinant there. But as coaches, let us carry this responsibility on our shoulders and not wait for somebody else to make that change. I think that will be how I would want to wrap up the whole discussion. Back to you,
Thanks,
Brian.
Rozana?
Okay, so I feel like as democratization, I don't know what's wrong with me today. I'm eating my words. As it happens, I think, one of the most important things we have to maintain is the quality and the effectiveness of the coaching, because I think otherwise the value of, coaching will diminish, the effectiveness, will not happen. And the impact of coaching, on organizations, but also on society at large, will be compromised. So my advice to organizations who are looking to hire coaches is like, I think, do your due diligence. If you can try before you buy, do that. Get recommendations. I think that's important. And also have a very robust feedback and evaluation system to make sure that the coaching that your people are getting is effective.
Okay, that's really, really good advice. Taranjeet, final thoughts?
Sure. I think the first thing is there needs to be continuous learning. So when you're coming in as part of the democratized platform, it's not just one-off. There needs to be constant refreshing. There needs to be constant relearning on both sides. The organization side, to find out what is out there and how best we can apply it, as well as from the individual coachee side. But more critically, and this is, I think, something which is underrated, the area around ethical standards and confidentiality. Now, I feel that is absolutely critical. There's a reason why ethics is one of the prerequisites that we go through during our accreditation program. How would you discuss or how would you deal when you have these sort of things? Do you take it upon yourself, or do you refer them to a counselor, which is not who we are? Do you refer them to people who are more suited for these type of conditions, which is not us? Now, if you're not trained in that fashion, you wouldn't know the difference. And therefore, you take it upon yourself. And to Verticka's point, I like that. The responsibility lies with us as coaches. We have to do the right thing for them, not for us, for the coachee, whatever that may be. So those are my thoughts, Brian.
Taranjeet, Rozana, Verticka, thank you very much. It's been just a great discussion. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Now, we've been speaking to Rozana Halpin, Ontological Leadership Coach and Facilitator at KCOM Academy, Taranjeet Singh, the CEO of Quantum Step Advisory, and Verticka Kohli, the Leadership and Talent Consultant Facilitator at Ukaavi Consulting. This has been Biztech's AHA, the coaching show, and I'm Brian Fernandez. This interview will be on our website, www.Biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and website. It'll also be on multiple coaching platforms. Thanks a lot for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.